We started talking about a little over a month ago, and then we talked about during Vacation Bible School, summer hangout nights, and we're going to kind of talk about tonight too, this idea of service over self. And Matt, cut me down just a little bit. I'm ringing pretty good up here. But just this idea of serving God in a way that it is so much more over your wants and maybe what you think you need. It's humbling yourself before God and saying, God, no matter what you have in store for me, I want to do it. And if your life is anything like mine, I spent so many years in middle school and in high school focused on serving myself. And so all of the decisions I made, all of the plans that I did for myself was based on serving Ryan and not serving God. And so tonight we're going to continue this idea of putting our service over our own wants and our needs and talking about this idea of serving when you don't have time. Time is our most valuable resource that we have. More valuable than money, more valuable than resources we can gain. We cannot ever attain more time. Once we spend it, once we use it, it's gone. And the thing about time is we really don't know how much time we have left. And so every second is so important, every minute, every day. And again, if you're anything like me, I waste a lot of time. And I've spent a lot of my life, and if I could go back and spend all of the years that I wasted sitting on the couch watching TV that didn't matter or playing video games and put it in something that was worthwhile, I could have learned 3 or 4 languages by now, I feel like, because I've spent so much time on just useless garbage that it didn't really help me at all. And I'm sure you're probably thinking the same thing. And so this is a question that maybe not answer out loud, but just one for you to think, what do you spend most of your time doing? Thinking back to my time whenever I was in middle school and high school, I spent a lot of my time hanging out with friends. Any weekend that I had open that my family didn't have something, I was always trying to coordinate going over to one of my different friends' houses, and we would play basketball and we'd play video games. And I'm a very competitive person, so whatever it involved in it, I wanted it to be a competition. I wanted to be competing. And so I spent my whole middle school and high school really doing that, competing in everything that I could in sports and athletics and video games. And so I spent a lot of time. And the crazy thing is, if I were to think about my life in middle school and high school, I would have thought, man, I'm so busy. And I couldn't find any more time. And then I got to college and I was like, man, I didn't know how much free time I had in middle school and high school. And so in college I was like, man, I can't wait to get done studying and getting out into the real world where I can have more of a routine and schedule. And then I graduated and was like, what have I been doing my whole life? Where does the time go? And the truth is, we have 24 hours in a day, but if God somehow decided hey, tomorrow you're going to get 28 hours, we would find something to do to fill that extra 4 hours. It doesn't matter how many hours are in the day, we're going to find time to busy up our lives. We're going to pack every second of our life. And so the question that we have to answer tonight is, when will we decide to make time intentionally to walk in our relationship with Jesus? Because the truth is, we will never have time to live for God. We won't ever have enough spare time. And so in our minds, if we at the very beginning say, I'm going to serve God when it's convenient, or I'm going to serve God when I don't have anything else going on, because that's how we're conditioned a lot of times. I'll come to church when I don't have practice, or when I don't have homework, or when I don't have things going on. I'll serve God and go on mission trips whenever it's not available. And so right now you might be like, yeah, I know I can't be very dedicated to my walk with Jesus because I'm trying to get a scholarship, I'm trying to go academics, I'm trying to go sports. And so after I do that, but then you get to college and you're like, man, I'm just trying to get this degree. I'm trying to get a career. I gotta provide for my family one day. I gotta hit the books. And then you get a family and you're like, man, I gotta put money back. I'm gonna have kids one day. And then you have kids and you're like, man, I gotta take care. And before we know it, and you're probably thinking like, Ryan, you are so far ahead of me right now. But if we don't start thinking about this right now, a lot of you will be like there are so many adults that we have, and you hear adults say this all the time, that the next thing they know, they're 40, 50, 60, and they look back in their life and they say, where has the time gone? And I wish I'd have been living for Jesus as strong now, as strong then as I am now. And they're like, man, I've wasted the last 40 years of my life. I've wasted the last 50 years of my life. Because they were so focused on serving God when they had the time, and then it took so long for them to realize whenever they're looking at the end of their life and they realize they don't have as much time left as they had spent. Man, what have I been doing? And so if we can, as 11-year-olds, as 18-year-olds, everywhere in between or even older, if we can at the front end of our life start to get this thing right and start laying down the foundation now of saying, I'm going to serve God when He calls me to serve Him. And not that you forget everything else, because athletics and academics and other like music and hobbies, those things are important. And God wants you to excel in those things. And He wants you to put your all in those things. But how can you serve Him alongside of those things and not put Him so much on the back burner that you don't even think about serving God? And so tonight we're going to talk about this idea. And we're really going to look at an encounter that Jesus has with a couple of people, and this idea of serving when you don't have time. We're going to be in Luke 9, 57 through 62. The verses will be on the screen, and they say this. As they were traveling on the road, so this is Jesus and His disciples, someone said to Him, that being Jesus, I will follow you wherever you will go. Jesus told him, foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay His head. Then another said to him, then he said to another, follow me. Lord, he said, first let me go bury my father. But He told him, let the dead bury their own dead. But you go and spread the news of the kingdom of God. Another also said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go and say goodbye to those at my house. But Jesus said to him, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Tonight we're going to see three things from these three different encounters that Jesus had when it comes to this idea of serving when you don't have time. The first thing we see is serving without exception. Serving without exception. So here's a question, and again, maybe not say this out loud, but think about it. What are things you think Jesus could ask you to do that you wouldn't want to do? So what are some things Jesus could ask you to do that you're like, if I was being real honest, Ryan, I would not want to do those things? So like whatever it could be. Maybe you're not a very outgoing person. So you're like, Ryan, I can pray for people. Ryan, I can like encourage people behind the scenes. But if Jesus were to ask me to do what you're doing right now, I could never do it. I could never get on this stage in front of people and try to lead a lesson. That's just something I can never do. Or you're like, Ryan, I could live for Jesus. But if God were to ever call me to move away somewhere, and I felt really convicted to go out west where there's not as many churches, or to go overseas to a third world country, now that's something like I don't think I could do. Or you're like, Ryan, I want to follow Jesus and do this thing, but if it starts impacting my life outside of Sundays and Wednesdays, like if it makes it kind of awkward between people in my classrooms or people on my sports teams or people in beta or in band or whatever, like if I actually have to start interacting with them when it comes to like my relationship with Jesus, like I'll do a lot of things, but I won't do those things. The first thing we see in this idea of serving when you don't have time is that there is no exceptions when it comes to serving God. We can't say, God, I want to serve you, but. And the very first person who comes to Jesus, you would think they come to Him with a statement that is very like respectful, because He says this, I will follow you wherever you will go. Like if I had somebody that said that, like, Ryan, whatever you do, whatever you need me to do, however you want me to serve, like, I'm your man, I'm your woman. Like, that's the person I want. I would be like, thank you for, like, being willing to serve. Like, we're about to have mission to Lexington next week. And if, like, some of you were to say, like, Ryan, I realize that I love baseball, and I would really like to be at the baseball camp. But you know what? Like, wherever you need me to serve, like if you needed me to go to the art camp or the cooking camp, like, while I love baseball, yeah, I would love to do those things. Like, you would be the person in my mind. Like, of course, I would try to get you at baseball if you love baseball. But what I love is somebody who's just willing to say, wherever you need me to go. So you would think Jesus, when this person tells him, I will go wherever you want, I will follow you wherever, that Jesus would commend this person or applaud this person. But Jesus must have knew this guy's past, or he must have saw inside of his heart, or there must have been some kind of something that we don't pick up from the story. Because Jesus answers him with kind of a peculiar, like weird little thing. And he says, foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So he must have known that while that guy made that statement, I'll follow you wherever you'll go, he must have knew that there was something about this guy that would have had some kind of hesitation in his voice, or some kind of hesitation on where he would truly follow Jesus. You probably know people like that, right? You probably know people who they talk a big talk, but they don't really follow it up with their actions, right? They'll say, oh yeah, I'm going to do great things. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But they never really follow through with anything. And we do that so many times when it comes to God. We're like, God, I will serve you, but. And we always have a but in there. God, I'll serve you, but I just don't have time right now. One day I'm going to serve you. God, I'll do whatever you ask me to do unless it's something I'm not comfortable with. God, I'll ask you to do whatever you want me to do unless I feel like it's going to take me out of my comfort zone or embarrass me or fill in the blank, whatever it is. And the first thing we see in this idea of serving when you don't have time is there can't be exceptions. We can't say, God, I will do whatever you want, and then but, and have an exception in there. The second thing is serving without an exit plan. Serving without an exit plan. So this is something that I want to maybe hear a little feedback on, like nod, yes or no, or things like that. Are you a person who normally thinks of a plan B or a backup plan? Who in here thinks of a plan B or a backup plan? Who in here just kind of goes and flows by the seat of your pants and just whatever happens, happens, and you're like, if it don't work out, I'll figure it out in a moment? Like some of you could tell me exactly what you're going to do this weekend. You're like, Friday night, I have this planned. Saturday, I have this planned. If it falls through Saturday morning, I could do this and I could do this. Like, I'm a planner. I like to know what happens. Like, if you were to tell me, like, Ryan, next Friday, we're going to go to the lake. That's great. But, like, between now and Friday, I guarantee I'm probably going to text you and say, like, what time are we planning on going out? How long do you plan on being out? Like, what do I need to bring? What do you think we'll do once we get there? Like, I want to know these things. Like, do I need to bring my kayak? Do you have kayaks? Are we going to be on the pontoon boat? Like, I want to know the details of what's going to go on. That's just my personality. Like, I'm not, like, I feel like I'm pretty flexible and I'm fine with change, but, like, I kind of like to know a plan. And so some of you, and you might grow into a person like that. Like, right now, you might not be much of a planner because you just kind of let your parents or whatever, you just kind of go with the flow. But maybe one day you'll become more of a planner and more like you want to know the details of everything going on. And so, like, you don't really know how that impacts you serving Jesus, but it really does. Because if you're that type of person that plans everything out, then trusting your life of service to Jesus is going to be very hard. Because Jesus doesn't always give us steps 5, 6, 7, and 8 in His plan. He might just tell you, go and do this, and you might say, like, well, God, what does that mean here, here, and here? And He might not give you the answer for that. That was one of the hardest things for me to do in surrendering to the ministry. I probably knew from the 6th grade that God was calling me to surrender to the ministry. I knew very early on that God was setting me apart and, like, had my life for full-time ministry. But it wasn't until almost my senior year of high school that I actually surrendered to that. And a lot of it was because of that personality of I wanted to know what would happen if I gave my life to Jesus. And I couldn't plan those things out. I had no control over, like, even knowing, like, would I get into the school that I needed to get into to prepare for that? would I be able to get a job one day? Would I excel in that? Is that something that I would even be good at? Like, I had really no way of knowing any of those things. And then even every single day as I'm in this, I'm still working on a degree, but I don't know, like, God, what does the next chapter of my life look like? What do you have in store for my future ministry? And so many people, they view student ministry as like a stepping stone onto something else. And so I've had so many people ask, like, well, how long do you plan on being in student ministry? And the truth is, like, I don't have a plan. Like, I'm not, like, I went to school with a guy who, he's been at 5 churches since we have been from Union to now. So I started at Union in 2010. We started working about the same time. So he probably started working in 2013 or 14. In that, 5 to 6 years, he's been at 5 different churches, which blows my mind. I don't even know how you would get anything done in 12 months at a church. But that's what he's done. He's traveled a lot. And even in talking to him over the last little bit, he said, you know what? Be expecting, like, in probably a year or two, we're planning on moving back to, like, this area. And so, like, he has a plan, and it doesn't really seem like he's, and I'm not, like, questioning anybody's, like, trusting in God. Like, maybe God leads him in that way, but he seems to plan out farther ahead than God leads sometimes. And so you might be sitting here thinking, like, yeah, Ryan, I would love to live for Jesus, but what would that look like if I started standing up and telling my friends, you know what, I really don't want to do that because it really just goes against what I believe as a Christian. Like, what would it look like if I started telling my friends I didn't want to go and start, like, keep doing the same stupid things that we're doing? And that was really something that hit me whenever I was in my senior year, and I've talked about this quite a bit recently, but, like, I surrendered to the ministry, and then the next 3 months after that were some of the farthest I ran from God in my entire life. And it really was a break in the path moment where I told my friends, like, look, I want to keep hanging out with you, but I can't keep hanging out with you in my conviction living for Jesus and be with you while you just get stupid drunk every weekend. Like, I can't continue to put myself in that environment. And I was like, so, like, we've hung out our whole lives and we've never had to do this, and for whatever reason in these past few months you feel like you need alcohol to have fun. But, like, I still want to be your friend, but if you're going to have that every time we hang out, then I can't hang out. And I say that very just transparent and real to you that, like, some of my friends were like, you're right, we don't need that. But some of my friends were like, you're an idiot, and they kept doing it. And we just didn't hang out as much as we did before. And while that, like, would blow my mind whenever I was your age for somebody to tell me that you would be okay in that, like, you will. Because, like, the foundation you lay right now will impact you the rest of your life. And so, like, people who care more about having a good time and care more about themselves than they care about you are not going to be there for you when you truly need them anyways. And I tell you that because I've experienced that. And so you have a guy here in the story who he tells God, I will serve you, but let me first go and bury my father. Which sounds like a very, like, commendable thing, right? Like, of course we need to take care of our parents, but the way that this story portrays itself, this guy's father probably wasn't dead. What he probably meant in the way of him explaining that was, my dad's getting older, so let me go hang out with my dad for the next few years and then get his inheritance so I have something to fall back on if this doesn't work out. This guy was pretty much telling Jesus, let me make sure I got my nest egg before I follow you, because if we need money, if I need somewhere to sleep, if I need, just something to fall back on other than you, Jesus, let me have that. And Jesus tells him, when you follow me, there can be no exit plan. And that's so hard for me to do. The planner inside of me so many times says, man, I want to make sure that I can provide for myself and my family. I want to make sure that I make very rational, logical decisions. But sometimes following Jesus isn't always rational when it comes to the human perspective. I've told you the story of how I had a friend who was my best friend, but it just blew his mind that I would want to spend a week out of my summer doing mission work. I told him, like, he was going to the beach, and he knew that I was going to, like, Georgia one year. And he was like, oh, are you going to the beach too? And I was like, no, we're going to work on houses. I'll actually probably be doing roofing or something like that. And he was like, oh, how much are you getting paid? And I was like, I'm not getting paid. I'm actually having to pay like $300 to go sleep on this high school floor and put on this roof. And it blew his mind. He was like, why would you want to do that? Why would you not only go and spend a week out of your summer while you could be going having fun, like serving others, but pay to do that? Like, it blows somebody's mind. Like, following Jesus is not always rational. Following Jesus doesn't make sense for the world. Like, why would you give 10% of the money that you work for and you've earned back to God in tithes and offerings? Why would you do that? Why would you, on Sunday, when you could sleep in after working all week, why would you take Sunday morning and try to consistently go to church? Why in the middle of the week on a Wednesday night in the middle of the summer would you come and sit in a room with a bunch of other people and you could be out at the lake or you could be swimming at the pool? Like, it doesn't make sense. But following Jesus and truly serving Jesus, we have to get to a point where we say, God, I will serve you without an exit plan. That even if nobody else follows me, even if I don't have a plan B, even if I don't know what the path looks like ahead, I'm willing to still follow you. I'm still willing to serve you. Serving Jesus when you don't have time is serving without exception, serving without an exit plan. Third and lastly, it's serving without excuses. So I want to hear back from you on this. What are some excuses that you use not to do what you need to do? So maybe not even just living for Jesus, but just doing any task you're going to. What are some excuses that you use? Say you have homework due or something and you don't do it. What's an excuse that you would use? All of you are straight A students that always get your work done. Have a hard time believing that. Your parents come in and your room's not clean. What's the excuse you give them? You're tired. So I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry, Dad. It's just really tired. I haven't got around to it. What else? Why didn't you take out the trash, Braxton? What's going on? What's an excuse you give? Yeah, my legs are hurting too bad. I don't want to walk up the stairs and get the trash, take it to the street. We give excuses. Like, excuses are so easy to give. And, I mean, if you were honest, and some of you are probably thinking of some you use right now, like, they're, huge and whatever. Like, excuses like, man, like, it's during the summer so you don't have this, but during the school year, you're like, man, I just have so much homework, or I've had to study for test, or I've had, like, a lot of sports things, or even during the summer now, you have practices you have to still go to and conditioning things you have to do. Maybe you have a job that you have to work. Like, you have things that take up your time. And so when you're thinking about right now, like, okay, I'm going to truly serve Jesus, it's very easy to think of a million excuses of why you wouldn't do things God is calling you to do. For example, we have Mission to Lexington next week. And we have an opportunity to put into practice exactly what we talk about every week, exactly what Brother Clay talks about every week. The whole mission of our church is to take the gospel across the street, across the states, and across the seas. And so, literally, in the span of 2 weeks, we're going to get to see the whole mission. Really, in 1 week, we get to see our whole mission strategy of our church happen, because on Sunday, we have a mission team going to Guatemala, so they'll be serving across the seas, and then we'll get the opportunity to serve across the streets in Mission to Lexington and serve across the states and go into Arkansas. So in 7 days, we get to see the mission strategy of our church happen. Like, that's amazing to me. That we not only say as a church we want to take the gospel across the streets, states, and seas, but we have practical ways that we do that. So we all, each and every one of us, have the opportunity this week to be a part of something larger than ourselves. To use the skills and abilities God has given us to help kids hear the gospel in maybe a way they've never heard. You probably know of people who would never come and sit in a room like this, but you know what they would do? They would go and play baseball or basketball or soccer, or they would come to an art or cooking camp. Or they would walk out of their backyard, out of their back door into their backyard of their neighborhood in a backyard Bible club and play a game and hear the gospel in a non-threatening environment that's not in the church. You probably know a ton of people who would do that. And this week, we will not even have to go out into the community and try to get people to come in. We have almost 150 kids registered that are coming to us, giving us the opportunity to share the gospel to them. And there's a lot of you that will have a lot of excuses of why you can't serve next week. You'll say, Ryan, this is my dead week, but man, my whole summer is packed full, and I want to take these 2 weeks to just kind of live for myself. I really just don't want to stay up at the church. I would really rather just not have to spend my time all the way up there. I want to have that exit plan. Like, I'll come and do the camp, but I don't want to be a part of the full week because I don't want to bind myself into what's going on up there. I'll just tell you this. My entire life, every summer, I was very fortunate. I just thank God every day because I didn't realize it growing up how blessed I was with the parents I got and the situation we were in. But I grew up in a home with two parents who I knew loved me. They took me to church. But not only that, but every summer we would try to go on vacation, and it was a great thing. And out of all of the vacations that we went on, out of all the days in the summer that I spent with my grandparents who we would go fishing and we would ride four-wheelers, and out of all of those things, the memories I remember the most about my summers growing up as a kid were the mission trips that I went on every summer with my church. And I know that sounds like churchy, and that's not me talking as a youth. That's just me being honest as a person. Those are the memories I remember the most. The times I remember the most about Union, of course, were some of the classes that I struggled with and things like that. But there were also the go trip that I went on my spring break my first year, where we went to Rhode Island, and I about froze to death standing at a bus station in the middle of the sleet and snow whenever I was in a group full of introverts. But the church planter said, we need people to talk to these people before they get on the buses and tell them that we have church service Sunday morning in this lobby of this hotel. And so I'm looking around and everybody else is like, I don't like talking to people, so I'm like, I guess I'm the one who will go out in the sleet and the rain and out here and talk to these people. It won't be awkward at all as they're trying to go to work. Of course I'll do it. Like, that's what I remember. I remember doing that. I remember going to Guatemala and being my first international mission trip and being scared to death going overseas, not knowing what I was doing, and then getting a stomach bug with a group of people I barely knew. And then by the end of the week, we were more than family, because you get the stomach bug with 2 bathrooms with 20 people. You get to know people real well. But in that, like, getting to share the gospel and getting to serve a community that would have not been able to do the work that was able to do. But like, those are times whenever I could have said, you know what, like, I'd rather do these other things. I'm in school right now. Like, I remember going to the Dominican Republic with a group of people and being able to serve missionaries down there. I remember going with my dad, one of the best mission trips I've been on, to Ecuador, and being able to serve alongside of my dad in the community there, and being able to go and like talk about like serving without excuses. Like, my dad in Ecuador tore his ACL. One of the most unathletic moments I've ever seen in my life. We're playing soccer with his family. He steps on the soccer ball within the first 30 seconds of us being out there, tears his ACL in front of them. The second he stepped on it, I was like, he tore his ACL. Grossest thing I've ever seen in my life. He went the rest of the week walking on this torn ACL like nothing happened. I'm like, dude, you tore your ACL? Like, stop. He's like, oh, no, I'm fine. Get back to the United States, has to have surgery, tore his ACL. Like, the reason that I have the passion about serving, the reason that I have the drive about serving is because I saw every day my parents model service for me. They showed me what it looked like to serve without excuses, to make time to serve God. And so, like, you might not have been in that same situation where you see service played out every day, but I promise you, you could be that example to your friends where they say, you know what, I've never seen anything like it, but fill in the blank with your name, serves more than anybody I've ever seen before. They put others above themselves without excuse every day. For example, another person, Miss Debbie, who we just lost a month ago. One thing that everybody across the board, no matter how well you knew her, the one common theme everybody talked about her was that she served others without excuse. She loved other people, and she did whatever she could to make people known. Me and Rebecca at the Southern Baptist Convention in Birmingham, talking to the president of Union University, who would have not known her from anybody, but came up here for a wedding, said, I heard that your church pianist was in the hospital. How is she doing? Because I remember how well she served me as he just came to do a wedding. She encountered him for one day, and she made enough of an impact that when he saw on social media, he cared enough to ask about her. And then he was visibly saddened when he heard that she passed away. She made an impact on somebody she would have never thought she would have had just because she was willing to serve others without excuse. We don't know who's looking at our life. We don't know who we're going to encourage or discourage from following Jesus. We talk about this every week, but some people, as crazy as it may seem, might be looking at your life basing how they will follow Jesus off of you, because all they need is that model or that encouragement. And they know that you go to church. They know that you claim to be a Christian. No matter how strong of a Christian you may be, you might be that like spiritual role model in their life. And you might be saying, Ryan, I'm nobody's spiritual role model. Like, you don't know how jacked up my life is. But just the fact that you're sitting in here tonight, you are leaps and bounds farther than a lot of people in our community. Just the fact that you're willing to sit in a room tonight. And so you might be saying, like, Ryan, you don't realize what's going on in my life. You don't realize, and we can give a lot of excuses, and I think time is one of the biggest excuses we give. But not only is time a big excuse, it is the best resource that we have. We know that things are important to us by what we devote our time to. You show people in your life that they're important to you because you give them your time. Your friends, the ones you care about, you show them you care about them because over anybody else you spend time with them. If you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you show them that you care about them because you spend time with them. When you start spending time with your friends more than your boyfriend and girlfriend, what happens? It's not great, right? You start getting in arguments, like you spend more time with them over me, like what's going on. And so you show them like, hey, I do care about you and I want to spend some time with you. Time is a big commodity. And honestly, if we were to break it down, the time that we truly spend with Jesus or doing the things of God and Jesus are probably so small that if we were to have like a true breakdown in our life, like I don't know if you've ever looked at like the screen time on your phone based on like what you do, it'd probably blow your mind if you looked at that. You're like, I spent 17 hours looking at my phone today. Like, how is that even possible? I was only awake for like 9 of those hours. Like, how did that even happen? But like, if we look at what we spend our time on, like if we were able, like, and maybe one day when we stand before God and like it says that we'll fall at His feet and like worship Him, maybe it's because He lays out in front of us how much time we've wasted and yet He still loves us. But like if we were to be able to see, like if your life was flashed up on the screen right now and it gave you a minute-by-minute breakdown on what you spent your time on, like how much would you truly be able to say, you know what, I spent my time on something that had to do with Jesus today? If we're being honest with each other. I think all of us, myself included, would probably be ashamed at the amount of time, like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, like, and I'm speaking to myself as well. The time would be huge. And then it's like reading your Bible and praying and serving and caring about others. It would be like so small. Our time is so important. Your time is so important. And you might not be thinking about it because you're like, man, Ryan, I'm like 11 years old. I'm 17 years old. Like, what's the big deal? Don't waste your time. And how do you start serving when you don't have time? And I'll say again, one easy practical way that you can put this immediate into action is say, you know what, I've made a lot of excuses to not serve next week, but I'm going to come to Mission to Lexington Monday to Wednesday. And you know what, maybe I'll even step out in faith and I'll go to Arkansas and serve a community there, because the beautiful thing about what we're going to do in Arkansas is that we don't reap any benefit from going to Osceola, Arkansas. We could serve selfishly here in Lexington because we could say, well, we're going to try to bring people and boost our numbers. But when we go to Osceola, Arkansas, there is nothing selfish that we can say from that. We are selfishly or unselfishly going there to say, you know what, here's a church that we can help, that we can breathe life into, that we can help put on these backyard Bible clubs, that we can make an impact in the community. We can give our time to this church who doesn't have the manpower we have, who doesn't have the resources we have, and we can share the gospel in a community and help this church make an impact for all eternity. And you would have the opportunity, if you would stop making excuses and give yourself in service of time, the opportunity to look kids in the eyes who maybe have never heard the gospel before, That blows our mind, right? But did you know that there are people in Henderson County that probably go to your school that don't really know what it means to follow Jesus? They probably, if you were to ask them what does John 3:16, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. There might be people sitting in this room tonight that if you were to say, what is the way to heaven, they couldn't tell you. And we have the opportunity to give people our time, and by giving them our time and serving them, we can give them something so much more valuable than that, and that's the love of Jesus and eternal life. And so tonight, I want to leave you with this. What are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your life? If at the end of your life you were to look back, and if even now your time ended at this very moment and you look back at the life you've lived up to now, would you be able to say that you have stewarded your time well? You were faithful with the time that God gave you. I look back at my life and I see that there are moments that I did a very good job, and then I see that there are days and moments that I have failed tremendously and I've been so selfish with my time. And tonight you might be saying, Ryan, I want to do this, but how do I do it better? Well, the first way to truly serve Jesus with your time is to serve Him with your life. And if you've never started a relationship with Jesus, how can you serve Him with your time? Because you don't serve Him in general. And so tonight I'd say if you've never started a relationship with Jesus and you've never given Him your life, start with that before you give Him your time. Because He don't want you to just serve Him to try to just work yourself better. He wants a relationship with you. The God of the universe created you to be in relationship with Him. Your sole purpose, like there are people that are seeking, and probably one of the most asked questions that people seek is, what is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to be in relationship with your Creator, God.